Dr. Ravi's hands shook as he stared at the shattered mirror, its broken fragments scattered across the floor like lost pieces of his once perfect thoughts. A scientist of unparalleled genius, he had spent decades perfecting his work, always striving for perfection. Every calculation, every experiment, every theory had been executed flawlessly. But now, standing in his laboratory with the pieces of the mirror in front of him, his mind raced with panic. This was a disaster. The breakthrough he had been working on for years, the project that had promised to change the world, was suddenly in jeopardy. In his frantic state, Dr. Ravi had accidentally knocked over the mirror, one that had been meticulously set up to reflect the data from his latest experiment. It was more than just a mirror. It was a symbol of his work, a piece of his legacy. And now it was broken, shattered into countless fragments that glistened on the floor, mocking him. He sank to his knees, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. "Everything I've worked for, ruined by a single mistake." In that moment of despair, he felt a soft hand on his shoulder. It was Asha, his assistant, a young woman with a calm demeanor that often contrasted Dr. Ravi's high-strung nature. She had been with him for nearly 2 years, observing his genius from the sidelines, learning from his every move. But unlike him, Asha had an innate sense of peace and patience that Dr. Ravi had often envied. "Dr. Ravi," Asha said gently, "it's just a mirror." He looked up at her, eyes filled with frustration. "You don't understand. This mirror was part of my experiment. It was crucial. And now look at it. Everything is ruined." Asha smiled softly and knelt beside him. "I know it feels like a disaster right now, but sometimes things break for a reason. Maybe this is just a part of the process. You've always been afraid of making mistakes, but maybe it's the mistakes that will lead you to something better." Dr. Ravi shook his head, unable to understand what she meant. "How can you say that? This was a failure." Asha picked up one of the larger shards from the floor and held it up to the light. "Look at this piece. What do you see?" Dr. Ravi stared at the shard, unsure of what she was getting at. "It's just a broken mirror." "But what if it's more than that?" Asha pressed. "What if the pieces can be put together in a new way? You're a scientist, Dr. Ravi. You know that when something breaks, it's not always the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of something new." Dr. Ravi frowned, but he didn't respond. Instead, he sat back, watching Asha as she continued to gather the shards of glass. Her hands moved with care and precision, as though she had done this before. In truth, Dr. Ravi had always admired Asha's ability to find solutions in the most unexpected places. She had a talent for seeing patterns where others saw chaos, and perhaps this was one of those moments. "What are you doing?" Dr. Ravi asked, his voice still tinged with doubt. "I'm fixing the mirror," Asha replied simply. She didn't rush. She worked with patience, carefully placing the shards next to each other, arranging them as though she were piecing together a puzzle. Dr. Ravi watched, his frustration slowly melting into curiosity. How could she fix something that was beyond repair? How could she turn this broken object into something useful again? Hours passed, and Asha worked in silence, her focus unwavering. Dr. Ravi couldn't help but be drawn into the process. It was almost as though she was creating something new, something beautiful from the wreckage. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Asha stepped back and gestured for Dr. Ravi to take a look. He stood up slowly, still unsure of what to expect. But when he saw the mirror, his breath caught in his throat. The mirror was no longer the same as it had been before. It wasn't perfect. The cracks, the jagged edges, the slight misalignments of the shards, they were all there, but they were part of something bigger, something more intricate. The shattered pieces had been arranged in such a way that they formed a stunning, almost artistic design, one that was unique in its imperfection. "You fixed it, Doctor," Ravi said, his voice barely a whisper. Asha smiled and nodded. "I didn't fix it in the way you might have expected. But sometimes things don't need to be perfect to be valuable. It's the broken parts that make it more interesting, more beautiful." Dr. Ravi stood in awe, taking in the sight before him. The mirror, once a symbol of his failure, was now a symbol of resilience. It was a reminder that even in moments of catastrophe, there was still potential for something new to emerge. It wasn't about avoiding mistakes. It was about embracing them, learning from them, and using them as stepping stones towards something greater. "I've spent my entire life avoiding mistakes," Dr. Ravi said, his voice heavy with realization. "I've been so focused on achieving perfection that I've missed the beauty in imperfection." Asha nodded. "Mistakes are a part of life. They're a part of discovery. You can't create something truly innovative without first failing. It's through those failures that we learn, adapt, and grow." Dr. Ravi took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. The fear that had held him back for so long, the fear of making mistakes, began to fade. In its place, there was a new sense of freedom, a sense of possibility. He had spent so many years striving for perfection, but now, for the first time, he understood that perfection wasn't the goal. The journey, the process of creating and learning, was what mattered most. The next day, Dr. Ravi returned to his experiment, but this time he approached it differently. He didn't obsess over the details or try to control every variable. Instead, he allowed himself to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to let the process unfold naturally. And in doing so, he discovered something even greater than he had imagined, a breakthrough that not only changed the course of his career, but also reshaped his understanding of success. Years later, Dr. Ravi looked back on that day, the day the mirror shattered, and realized that it was one of the most important moments of his life. The broken mirror had taught him more than any success ever could. It had taught him that mistakes were not the end. They were simply the beginning of something new, something beautiful. Moral lesson of the story: sometimes it is only through the cracks and the brokenness that we find our true potential. Mistakes are not to be feared. They are opportunities for growth, innovation, and discovery.